Hi geographers, and welcome to the latest video of the Castle View Geography YouTube channel. Today looking at the effects of climate change. What I want you to do is, can you please write the title and complete the do now for me. I'll give you a moment to pause the video before going through the answers. Thank you. Right, brilliant, well done. Question 1 is 27 degrees. Question 2 is between 5 and 30 degrees north and south of the equator. Question 3 is 96,000 years. Question 4 is false, it would be warmer. Question 8 is cattle farming as cows release methane, which makes the atmosphere thicker. Question 6 is nature and then humans. Question 7 is 2500. And question 8 is the hard interchange. Right, so today we're looking at the effects of climate change. The blue zone is looking at the environmental impacts of climate change are more significant than the impacts on people. To what extent do you agree with this statement? That's where we're going to end today. And you just got two key words there. You've got magnitude, which refers to the size of a tropical storm, earthquake or event, and coral bleaching, which is where coral reefs turn white, so you can no longer photosynthesize and die, reducing the habitat for animals. So please pause the video and jot down the key words for me. Thank you. Let's continue then. So the Earth is around 1.1 degrees warmer than it was in the late 1800s. The last decade, from 2011 to 2020, was the warmest on records, and there is a global target to limit future global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees by 2100. However, some predict that we will hit this by 2040. So we can really see that this intense global warming is going to have a lot of impacts on society and the environment. If there's an increase of 1 or 2 degrees, it might sound small, but it will be disastrous. It's going to lead to increased frequencies of natural disasters, so tropical storms will happen more often in the summer. It will increase the intensity, the magnitude of natural disasters, so tropical storms are going to get stronger in power, so it could be more category 5 tropical storms. It could change habitats, leading to the collapse of food chains and food webs as animals migrate, and it can make some environments more hazardous and challenging for humans to live there. So I'm just going to talk through, start with the first impacts of climate change, so social and environmental. So the first one is we've got social impact. We've got the risk of coastal flooding as sea levels rise. This means homes will be destroyed, which means people will be forced to move away from where they're living and working. An environmental impact we've got is coral bleaching. What we can see here is the coral has turned white, so it no longer photosynthesizes. This means that it can no longer provide habitat for animals that live there, which means that the food web of these coral ecosystems will collapse, reducing biodiversity. We've got increase in heat waves. In 2018, a heat wave killed 86 people in Canada. Also with heat waves, this leads to more heat stroke for people, so it's a social impact. And when more people get heat stroke, there's increased pressure on hospitals, leading to waiting times increasing, therefore preventing curable diseases being diagnosed and cured in time. Another social impact is higher temperatures can lead to lower crop yields or lead to crops failing entirely. This can lead to both social and economic issues. It can lead to a lack of food scarcity, which can lead to people becoming malnourished and having a famine, which means more people could die. Alternatively, it can have economic impacts where the income for farmers decreases, so they've got less disposable income. An environmental impact is glaciers are starting to shrink and melt, and ice sheets are melting in the Arctic, and this is destroying habitats for polar bears. And if the polar bears start to die in the Arctic, this is going to collapse the whole food web. If the predator dies, then the rest of the food web beneath it will collapse, as it will overpopulate and then starve itself. Another environmental impact is the changing temperatures in the UK. So this is leading to birds migrating earlier, and this can then, as birds migrate earlier, it can then lead to the food webs collapsing and the biodiversity decreasing. Another environmental impact is some areas will receive more rainfall, some of the areas will become drier, with less rainfall. Obviously, if areas are becoming drier, This means that crops are going to fail, leading to malnutrition and ultimately a famine for places, especially around the Mediterranean. And another impact of climate change is we're going to see more floods, more droughts, more heat waves become more common, last longer. And again, this leads to people getting heat stroke and professional healthcare services. It's going to lead to a reduction of food production. So this is going to lead to malnutrition as well. So there's lots and lots of. When we think about climate change, we really ought to think it's going to be hotter, drier, more extreme weather events such as storms, tropical storms, forest fires, and the weather in general is going to make life harder for people living here. In the UK, we're going to see warmer and wetter winters, so more storms. We're going to see hotter and drier summers. This could lead to more hosepipe bans, lack of fresh water, and frequent and intense weather extremes. So, what we need to be able to do is explain these impacts. So, like I said, environmental ice impacts in the ice melts in the Arctic. Polar bears lose their habitat. This means the food web will collapse. The same as coral bleaching. When coral bleaches, it can no longer photosynthesize, so animals can no longer live in the coral reefs. This means that the food webs will collapse and again reducing biodiversity. Forest fires becoming more widespread and frequent. When there's more forest fires, this means that CO2 is released from the trees, which makes the atmosphere thicker, so more long-wave solar radiation is trapped, and this in turn can lead to climate change getting more severe on a global scale. And it also creates competition for food in places where climate is changing. Bamboo is not growing as regularly in China. If there's a lack of bamboo, pandas are going to lose their source of food. And if pandas start to decrease, this could lead to the food chain and food webs collapsing, again reducing biodiversity. But it also affects people. This is a picture of the Maldives in the Indian Ocean, and where sea levels rise, salt water destroys farmland. If the farmland is destroyed, it means there's going to be an increased risk of famine, malnutrition, and people ultimately will die. Another impact on people is conflict over water. The Colorado River in the US and North America and Mexico, the river is running dry due to lack of rainfall, and this is going to lead to America using more of the water that's there to meet their needs, which means further downstream in Mexico there's going to be less water. That's going to lead to some disagreements and maybe future conflict between the USA and Mexico. Heat waves, like I already mentioned. Increasing heat waves lead to more people getting heat stroke. This in turn puts more pressure on health services, which means that other people might not be seen as waiting times increase. And drought, prolonged periods of dry weather with no rainfall leads to crops failing. This means that food will decrease its availability, which means people could be malnourished and more people could die. So what I want us to do for me is I've got here 4 impacts on the environment of climate change for people. What I want you to do is I want you to copy out each impact. I then want you to rank the impacts on the environment from biggest to smallest, 1 to 4. I want you to double develop the 2 biggest impacts on the environment. So copy them out and then do this means, which means. Some of you will push and do this means, which means, therefore. I then want you to copy out the impacts on people. And again, I want you to double develop the 2 biggest impacts. This means, which means, therefore. So pause the video here, copy out the impacts, rank them 1 to 4, which is the biggest to smallest impact, I should say, and then double develop the top 2. Brilliant, well done. Right, well done guys. Hopefully your answers look something like this. I'll allow you to pause the video here so you can read through the answers to make sure your change of reason is similar to what I've got there. If you want to add the other ones down, please feel free. It's always going to help you in your blue zone to have more change of reason written down. So pause the video here and just double check your work. Awesome, well done guys. Going to move on now to the final task, blue zone. So, just do a quick little check, just me verbally going through some change of reason. We've got every 10 years Arctic sea ice loses 13% of its ice. This means animals like the polar bears lose their habitat, which means the food webs will collapse and the biodiversity in the Arctic regions will decrease. Alternatively, during the 2003 heatwave in Europe, 70,000 people were seriously ill with heat stroke. This means there's increased pressure on hospitals, which will mean waiting times increase, which means people with curable and preventable diseases might not get the treatment they require, so therefore more people could die as a result of this heatwave. So there's just two chains of reasons to go over the environmental and social impacts. Right, so what I want you to do is write out and bug this question. The environmental impacts of climate change are more significant than impacts on people. To what extent do you agree with the statement? So to answer this question, you need to first of all decide, is climate change worse for the environment or worse for people? That's going to help you with your A, or to a large extent, to a small extent. You need an AKU on environmental and an AKU on people. You need a conclusion, who is affected more and why, and two, that's a PLC. Got some keywords there for you to use as well. Well, I'm just going to show you one I made earlier, and it's not perfect, so we can see how we can improve it. Okay. So it says, to a certain extent, I agree that climate change has major impact on the environment. A, we're saying there's a little bit in environmental impacts. For example, every 10 years, the Arctic loses 13% of its sea ice. Knowledge and PLC, perfect. This means animals such as polar bears will lose their habitat. 1U. That's not finished, because we've not explained why that is bad if the animals lose their habitat. To a larger extent, I disagree as the impacts of climate change on people are greater. It's a perfect sentence. That really clearly says that this person believes that they don't agree with the question, they think climate change is worse for people. For example, droughts reduce the size of wheat yields. That's a good bit of knowledge. Could they have added a bit of PLC from the notes they made earlier? I think they could. This means farmers have less crops to sell. Again, okay, 1U, but they haven't developed it further. They haven't given a greater depth of understanding, which means, therefore, could they explain that further? In conclusion, I believe the impacts on people are larger, as even the environmental impact of sea ice melting will affect people as sea levels rise and flood coastal towns and cities. And that's a really nice conclusion. They've really drawn their opinion together and also explained how the environmental impacts will then knock onto people, so the impact on people is bigger. Really, really good. So what we need to do now is pause the video, have a go at answering this 9-mark question using the success criteria and keywords. When you are done, please make sure you bring your work in so you can stick it in your exercise book, email the work to your teacher or me, Mr. Randall, and we'll mark it and give you some feedback on it. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.